So since we just recently had Chaos Shuffle back, I figured this would be a good time to sit down and talk about how I feel about the modifiers in game modes. I'm not going to cover, well, I am going to cover every single mode that has been in the game, but like probably not to the same extent as like Chaos Shuffle and 2v8, because the general consensus on Lights Out is like, it's cool atmospherically, but it's not great for gameplay, and My Little Oni was a one-time thing so far, but I'm still going to talk about them because I feel like they could be relevant in the future. Now, we're going to go ahead and start with My Little Oni, just because, like I said, it hasn't really come back, been a one-time thing, and because of that, I kind of don't want them to bring it back, but if they do, I'm not really sure what they could do to change it, because like the whole joke is pretty straightforward. It's a giant Oni versus tiny survivors. It's funny for an April Fool's mode, but it's not something that should be brought back unless it's an April Fool's mode, because that's kind of the whole gimmick. Is it's just meant to be funny and not really played seriously. Realistically, the only thing I can suggest them maybe doing is making it so it's not just Oni. They would have to rename it, obviously. It's just like My Little Killer or something. It's not, this is what I was kind of saying, like I hope they don't bring it back, because it was literally a one-shot mode meant to be a joke. Not a ton you can do to fix it, quote unquote, but like maybe you can add on to it by like having other killers as options. Like, could you imagine Blight or something like that? Like a giant trapper. Have fun avoiding those traps. In terms of its actual gameplay, you couldn't vault the windows or vault pallets as Survivor, nor could you vault windows as Killer, which makes sense due to size reasons. I couldn't really see a need for an Oni that size to vault a window, nor could I see a Survivor smaller than Chucky trying to vault a window. So it makes sense in that front. The only thing I could maybe think of is add a few more pallets, because like the loops were basically just normal maps. I don't think they've really tweaked the maps aside like taking out the main buildings and shack. There were just some loops thrown about, and maybe add a few more of those for balancing purpose. I know it's like a 3-gen mode and then all of a sudden the gates are automatically open, but you know, there should be a little more safety to it. And speaking of safety, base kit unbreakable, because believe it or not, I remember someone force slugging me as the killer in that mode and just going around and killing us that way. So maybe a base kit unbreakable, or maybe allow us to heal, because he can still have power, so I don't think it's going to be that big a deal. That's about all I have for this mode, though. Let's move over to Lights Out. Now, between the first iteration, that was the Alan Wake version technically, and the Castlevania version, there were a lot of changes. I know it doesn't seem like it, but the candelabra being added as an item really did make the mode a lot different than it was initially, because before it was just survivors don't have scratch marks, terror radius doesn't exist, there's no there was red stain on the killer, but like it didn't matter, as well as loadouts being entirely disabled, so the killer couldn't bring perks or add-ons, and the survivors couldn't bring perks or items, as well as offerings on both sides. And that was basically the first version of the mode. The second version, the Castlevania version, introduced Candelabra, like we talked about already. Now, the Candelabra item was basically the devs' way of giving the survivors an information tool, as well as some information denial, because if I'm recalling this correctly, if you popped a gen with the Candelabra on the top, killer would lose the ability to see gen auras for a little bit. Bit of a niche effect, but still something. Now, also, while the survivor was using the candelabra, they would be able to see the survivor HUD, basically the info that they took away, as well as see some gen auras nearby. And also, the lighting from it is really cool. I still think it's the most atmospheric the game has been. I still really like the mode just for this reason. This version of the mode would also introduce an increased anti-camp range, as people in the first iteration would take advantage of this hard and just camp hooks every single time. They also made gen repairs a little bit faster, but I didn't really notice it too much if I'm being honest. But yeah, on paper it's kind of just a dark mode with, you know, more bare bones experience. And I did like it, but I feel like there's some things we could do a little bit differently next time. Now, I'm gonna preface this by saying I don't know how technically possible these would be to implement into a game mode like this, but I'm going to throw these out there anyway. My first idea is to restore some light around gens that have been done. You can implement this by putting, I don't know, lamps on the walls or street lights or whatever, but within, let's say, 24 meters or so of that gen, you would get some lights, so you're not just completely pitch black, and you can see this light from up to a certain distance away. I don't know, let's say it's like, I don't want to say map wide, but you know, it could just be map wide, so you can see that area from a distance, but you're still in darkness. Everything around you is dark, but off in the distance you can see lights of where gens have been completed. Something like that. I also feel like it would do well for this mode to have very little ambiance, or just like maybe wind blowing or something. I feel like if it was completely still, or even like just very subtle ambiance, like I said, in pitch black, it would be terrifying, and I think that's just how it should be, but that's not really a suggestion on how to change the mode. No, it kind of is a suggestion on how to change the mode, just not like majorly. I do like the idea of the candelabra just to help you get some information as well as a bit of light, because that does work for you and against you in the sense of you're more visible, but you can also see more. So I do like that idea, though maybe make it a lantern or something so it's not directly tied to the theme of Castlevania. If you want to keep it that way, that's fine too. You should also get like glow sticks or something to like help mark things for your team. I know you can do that with the candelabra already by placing it somewhere, but you know, just like glow sticks to like mark a path for something or mark something important like a gen that needs to be done, something like that. Now I will go ahead and say that when you first pick up some of these items, the killer should be able to see your aura, but I feel like you should also get killer aura at some point. Maybe just built-in dark sense would be kind of nice for this mode, or I guess it would technically be as a Belmont, just whenever a gen pops, or maybe when you get in chase or something, you see their aura. Something like that. Like, there needs to be a little more survivor information, because the killer can very easily get the drop on you in this mode, and there needs to be a way to give you some sort of heads up that they're around. Premonition, maybe? Base kit Premonition. The one time that perk ever gets used. That's not all to say that all the changes should be survivor focused. I do think killer could actually unironically use a slight buff just for gen regression. Maybe do like what they did in 2v8 and have slightly faster gen regression after you kick, like having old Call of Brine base kit or something, or a slightly nerfed version of it, just a little bit of something, because gens can fly, and like I said, they apparently upped the gen speed last time, even though I didn't notice it. They still did it. So maybe just to counteract that a little bit. Doesn't have to be full power, just, I don't know, definitely not like how Brine is right now, because it is very not good. Alright, moving right along to Chaos Shuffle. I am going to keep this segment short, but that doesn't mean I don't have a lot to say about it, because I do want to make a lot of changes to Chaos Shuffle, but they can be basically summed up in a couple sentences. And that is, just make everything random. And I don't mean just perks, I mean everything. You cannot pick items, you cannot pick offerings, nothing, including what killer you wind up playing. Now, I don't care if you can pick what survivor you can play. If that wants to be randomized too, you can probably do that. But I'm saying for killer, you just go in, click play, random offering, random add-ons, random killer, random perks. Same for survivor. Random survivor, random perks, random item, random add-ons, random offering. And there's a chance, we'll say like, I don't know, a 4% chance or something, that one of those slots doesn't get filled with something. And that rolls for every single slot, obviously aside the character you're playing. So you could wind up with 3 perks and everything else, or you could wind up with 4 perks and an add-on missing, or you don't get an item, or you don't have an offering. There needs to be more chaos to the chaos, because right now it's just killer go in, find person, tunnel them out, because there's probably no anti-tunneling perks. Now, all that is to say that would not fix the tunneling problem that this mode currently has, and I feel like because of that, we should just give a longer unhook time, just like full-on base kit BT, the 20 seconds, maybe even 30 seconds, I don't know. Just something to make it so it's not as incentivized to tunnel, because again, killers basically know there's no DS, off the record, super unlikely, there's most likely no anti-tunnel perks, so just maybe a little something. But yeah. That's basically what I want to do, is just add more randomness to the mode. That's about it. That's going to wrap up that section. Let's go on to 2v8. Now 2v8 I think is already pretty relatively fun on both sides. Obviously playing killer with a friend is something a lot of us have wanted in the game forever, and we did finally get it, and I still think it's the most fun I've ever had in this game. Survivor, on the other hand, was a little rough the first time around. They did make it a little more fun in the second time by giving them team powers, basically, whether that's a heal or stealth or whatever. They also, in the second version, made it so you can get flashlight and pallet saves. That was not a thing you could do before, as they were basically just sent straight to cages after getting downed. There was nothing you could do about it. At least here, the killer has to pick up, but unfortunately that is one of my gripes with the mode. Picking up and hooking wastes too much time. Now, I know that you have to do that in the normal game most of the time, depending on how you're playing. But for 2v8, it felt more like a setback. Even though there are 2 killers, there are also 8 survivors. Let's just go ahead and say you're not working together. Both of you are chasing a survivor. That's 2 of the 8 survivors being occupied by you chasing them. And we'll go ahead and throw you a bone as well, saying there's another survivor waiting around each for a save. Okay, So that's 4 of the 8 survivors occupied. At least you know where half of the group is. But what is the other half doing? They could very well be on their way to popping 4 gens right after your first chase. And again, there's twice the amount of survivors, therefore you need 24 hook states instead of 12. So, being only at 2 hook states by the time 4 gens are done feels a little bad, and that's assuming you get them because you can be saved in this mode, so you might not even get the hook, and that's just a bunch of wasted time. Now, if you are double teaming, it's more likely that you're going to be able to get at least 1 hook because the other killer can protect you while you're picking up to cage them. But that just falls back onto the other thing, where that could be 6 different generators being worked on and you have no map pressure. Don't get me wrong, there are definitely ways that you can win as killer. In fact, I'm pretty sure we won more often than not when I played killer in 2v8. But if you just so happen to chase that one survivor that's extremely good against you, they're playing everything right, they're going to buy a lot of time for your team, and even if your teammate gets it down while you're in chase, that's still only 1 down while you're wasting your time with a survivor that's wasting your time. So you're relying on your other teammate to go ahead and pressure gens while you're still trying to get it down yourself. It's a very delicate balance that I'm not exactly sure how to strike. I do think that we need to find a middle ground in between the old hook system versus picking up. Maybe make it faster or something. Maybe have the save window be a little smaller. Something to balance it. I'm not exactly sure how to do it because this is a lot more debatable of a change compared to everything else I've said so far. Alternatively, and this is going to be a little controversial, you could just add another gen to the count, because if I remember right, even when there's only 1 gen left for the survivors to do, there's still 5 or 6 on the map that they can choose to do. So I think adding 1 more to the count wouldn't necessarily hurt too bad. So they need to do 9 gens instead of 8, that way the game won't fly as fast in their favor. There is something I'm forgetting to mention. They did introduce a back and forth mechanic where if the gens are popping, then their gen speeds are slower, but if you're getting cages before gens are done, then their gen speeds are faster. Which, yeah, that is nice, but there were games where that just did not seem to matter. So I still think maybe adding another gen to the count wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea, but again, I know that's going to be controversial. Also, tweaking the numbers of the mechanic I was just talking about wouldn't be a bad idea either. I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but maybe go ahead and increase those or decrease those depending on which way it's going, 5 or 10%. Just something to make it feel a little more balanced, like the game can swing either direction at any moment. Another thing I would like to suggest is maybe some side objectives. Now, I don't mean like add hex perks or like pig style bear traps that slow the game down like that. I don't mean anything like that. Just maybe little side objectives that survivors can go do to get a gen speed bonus, or things that killers can go do to get haste or something. I'm kind of just spitballing at this point because I do think there should be other things for you to do that aren't just gens or be chased, but that's also a bit of a open discussion, more or less, because there's a lot of things that you could do for it. And speaking of open discussion, this is where I go ahead and throw it over to you guys. Were there any changes that you would want to make? Anything I didn't mention? Go ahead and leave a comment and let's get the discussion rolling down there. Other than that, that's basically gonna do it for this video. I just wanted to talk about how I thought we could possibly change the game modes going forward. Some I thought about more than others, specifically Chaos Shuffle, because Chaos Shuffle got really boring to me really fast. Oh wow, I have random perks that do nothing. That's great. Here we go with the blight. That's gonna hard tunnel me. Anyway, that's gonna do it for this video. Until next time, take care of yourselves.